Welcome to the Microschools Show, your window on the global microschools movement. Whether you're a teacher with a dream to build a school of your own or a parent looking for a school that will suit your amazing kid, you're sure to be inspired by the creativity and innovation of our guests. I'm your host, Dr. Mara Leineberger. The Microschools Show was launched to feature guests from all over the globe who have championed a personalized learning environment for students by building a microschool of their own, as well as to spotlight some of the key players in the movement. Today, I'm speaking with Shiren Rattigan of Colossal Academy, which is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Colossal Academy is a progressive microschool and homeschooling learning center that supports approximately 10 to 15 students. Colossal Academy's mission is to offer 21st century education that brings together relevant academic skills in a new way. Colossal Academy places the student at the center of their learning so that the focus is on the student and not on the test. Teachers use modern techniques and best practices to support student-centered learning in a safe and student-empowered environment. Welcome to the show, Shiren.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you reaching out, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Hey, so for our listeners, we always start the show by asking you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and what inspired you to create Colossal Academy.
Well, that's an interesting trifold question, but so my name is Shiren Rattigan. I am the founder of Colossal Academy. It's almost like the Goldilocks effect happened at one moment where three intersections collided. So for me, what brought about Colossal Academy, I'm a mother of three very different girls. I'm also an international teacher, and I've taught for 10 years globally and in the US, and then my own background of education. So I'm dyslexic, and so the traditional education system didn't work for me. And I thought that I was stupid, and I went on to think that I should not ever go into anything that would be rigorous. And then the second part for me was to look around and see what was offered for my own children. And I didn't see anything reflected of who they are authentically, and that would continue to let them grow and actualize who they were. And the third part was just being completely disappointed by everywhere I went as a professional to do the work that I thought I was going to do as a teacher. I thought I was going to change the world and touch hearts and leave a lasting impression. But what ended up happening, regardless of if it were Montessori or international or small or large or public, I could only control what was in my classroom. But more than that, it was hundreds of kids. You're just working with hundreds and hundreds, lots of kids. And it was really difficult to build an authentic relationship with so many people. And with each child comes all of their family and their ancestral lining. So when we talk about with one child, they have everything that comes with them, all their background, all their parents. And I was having to interact with so many souls, for lack of a better term, that it was difficult for me to be able to have a rich, deep connection with people. So those are kind of the three elements that came together for me to decide that I have to do my own thing. And that it can look different. It is supposed to be different in the future, that every child could have a place, and that there's a perfect facilitator, educator system for every child.
I love that you brought together these three pieces, because there are things I think about, and it's something that not a lot of people, I think every microschool builder has these three things at the heart of their school, but not everybody can articulate it so clearly as you did, that it starts from this place of, as a child, school didn't work for me. Mm-hmm. And really, I don't know, I'm a good bit older than you, I think, Shiren, but nobody was worried that it wasn't working for me. But then I grew up and I became a professional educator. And really, in a lot of ways, I became it, and I bet you too, to try to make it different.
Right.
And then I couldn't. You can't change the big system of education. So in order to do that, You have to step outside and do something, or at least that's the way we're doing it with the microschools movement. And then you had this third piece that a lot of people, not everybody who builds a microschool has this, but a lot of them, once you have children, you're not satisfied professionally with what you can do for children. And then you have your own children and you're watching them being forced back into this system that's didn't work for you, isn't working for you. Now it's not working for them. And it's like that 3 strikes, you're out, right? It's literally 3 strikes. You're like, yeah, I'm going to do something different.
And I think that you actually mentioned something that I would like to talk about if it's okay, but although you and I might have some age difference, the education that you were given is the same education I was given, is the same education that I see my own children being forced into. So it's not that things have changed. The education system that my grandmother went to is very reminiscent of what is currently alive and active within the public and even in the private sectors who aim, I believe, to do something different. So I just wanted to point that out as well, that it hasn't really shifted, right? Like it's still the Bell system, still we quantify students with grades, we still ask them to submit to tests and timing in a way that it's no longer relevant for the 21st century and moving into the future. Just
yeah.
yeah,
You're absolutely right. It's so what you're really addressing is that curriculum has become more important than the child. And it's funny because curriculum isn't a bad thing. Like having big, knowing how concepts fit together, knowing the scope of a big topic of study and how to progress through that. There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually meant to be a guide to help us to know some of the best ways to help students learn content. But those things have actually become the focus, and the tests academically measuring a student's outcome, only academically, not all of those other ways that kids know and learn, have become the thing that school has its focus on instead of the child. I think I say this every single interview. The microschools movement is all about putting the child at the center, back at the center of education. Lots of people say they're doing that. But what I see with microschool owners is literally like every single day, that's what you're doing. You're not just talking about it, you're doing it, right?
right. Yeah, I think part of it is the numbers, right? When you keep it micro, you can give abundantly to each and robustly to each student, each child, and keeping the ratio between facilitator, educator, however you want to define that, and the amount of students that we have.
Yeah. The term doesn't matter. It could be teacher, educator, facilitator, guide, mentor, whatever you call that adult who's a couple steps ahead of the child. And I like to think of it this way, Shiren, has some wisdom. Mm-hmm. And it's not that that adult knows more than the child. It's just that the adult has more life experience. If you're an educator, you do have a good, strong sense of the standards, like the kinds of things that are really beneficial to learn and know. You have a sense of curriculum, so all of the content knowledge that you could impart or share or support in a child. And then, the shift in microschools is to guiding learning so that it checks off the boxes on the standards. We just do that. I mean, a lot of my clients do this. They just do it basically to give credence or to give validity to what they're doing, to say, we're not just hanging out all day playing. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Like that's good too, but not a whole lot of people have a strong threshold for that play-based, totally self-directed, unschooling kind of learning. But our educators, you can check off those things to basically say, this is what your child can do. Here's where they're strong. Here's where they're weak. And like both of those are great. If a child is a 5th grade student traditionally and is doing math at 7th grade and English at 12th grade and maybe understand science at a 2nd grade level, There's nothing wrong with that. It's just who that child is. They're different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, so
Yeah,
tell
I
us a little
agree.
bit more about your programming, because are you working online? I know because of the pandemic, most of your work's online, but tell us a little bit more about what your programming is like.
Mm-hmm. So I work with a cohort of three amazing, amazing teachers that I find I'm inspired by. Um, so we are all IB trained and Montessori trained. One of our teachers is Montessori trained, and we work on interdisciplinary projects. So we're able to have the teachers log in and sign in from different parts of the world. Some of us are in the US and some of us are abroad. And we're able to give a global education to the students. We are really enjoying and taking a hold of this opportunity to be online so that we're limitless in who and where we can speak. So we have a unit coming up on Egypt, and I, being an international teacher for so long, I have friends in Egypt. So when we do our international, when we do our pyramid study, we will actually get to see the pyramids from a friend and colleague in Egypt. So we are online and we're working globally with people. We have another project coming up in Brazil, Portugal, Bermuda, Mexico, and the United States, where we get to examine and learn about an animal in a zoo. And then students have a cohort from different students all over the world where they are able to design a product, some type of toy or entertainment piece for an animal in a zoo. Once they do that, they will design it. They send their designs and drawings to someone that will create it. And then in real time, we'll watch to see if the monkey or the giraffe or the lion or whatever we design or whatever the animal that we study is actually interacting with what we predict based on what we've learned about the animal. So, we work interdisciplinary, we work on a global scale, we're working on some very interesting, rigorous projects, keeping in mind that the students' interests are always in the center of it. And this all came from one of my students who's really into animals. All of my students are kind of into animals, but one of them who really would do well getting more exposure to what does it mean to have a job within animal care or being with animals. So yeah, that's kind of what we do. We also meet up locally here in Fort Lauderdale. We meet up and take our practical life skills into our community. So how that works for us is we go surfing on Fridays. We learn the physics, the marine biology. We're in touch with biologists and marine biologists and ecologists. And then we go surfing. So we learn physics of waves and surfing and riding a wave and how that actually works. And we put it to practice on a surfboard, but we also learn the ecology behind the ocean.
Wow. I mean,
so that's
being
what
in
we
Fort
do.
Lauderdale would be really hard for anyone to say, let's not spend a lot of time outside. So where, some people who live in more rural areas will have like a forest school or a farm school. You've got a beach school kind of going on. I
That
mean,
sounds
Fort
about right.
Lauderdale, right? Yeah. Okay, so you've got 3-4 people working for you. So you've got a team, and you've got 10 to 15 kids, something like that. What does a typical day look like for somebody who comes to Colossal Academy? Are you guys online
So
all day, or?
we are online from 9 until noon. We have 9 o'clock till noon. Students start with Spanish class from a teacher in Mexico. So they're getting native Spanish from a native Spanish speaker in a country that speaks Spanish. And then we also do some cultural, in my class, we'll do some cultural background around Mexico. So we did like a Dia de los Muertos celebration. And then afterwards, they go into their math levels. Some of my students are really advanced and need extra math, and some are right at level, if that's even a term we can use. And so it's varied. And then they come in and do like a social studies, language arts, like a humanities section. And then twice a week, we have a STEM kit that they have to unbox. We unbox it in class. and we work with it and manipulate whatever the STEM outcome might be. So that could be fluorescent paints. It could be roller coasters, learning about physics and roller coasters. It depends on, again, with what the week looks like. So they have hands-on manipulatives, and then they're also online, not so much in the platforms. We're not learning from a platform, but we're learning and having an interaction with the teacher. So I know other online programs, they really focus on having the student be self-guided with some kind of program online. We write our own curriculum, we design our own projects, and we work together as a team to, you know, one facilitator might find out a beautiful nugget of truth from one student, and then we use that to center our projects.
So it sounds like there's really a strong sense of community, not only amongst your team, but amongst your students as well.
Majorly. All the kids are friends. Oftentimes from 9 until noon we have class, and then from 1 to 2 it's kind of an unstructured get your work together with a facilitator to help you if you have any questions on math or you want to share or present. Oftentimes I'm like, okay guys, it's 2 o'clock, and they're like, no, we want to stay and hang out. Or so they're really close, and they play video games on the, I actually don't know all the terms, but they play video games together. Outside of the classroom, I find them to be really strong in their friendships. And one family is actually going to do Thanksgiving with each other this year because we COVID test before we meet. It's a regular part of our, as we come together face to face, we have to have a negative COVID test in order to be with each other. So we have all committed to staying home in some ways and making sure we're up to date on our COVID results. And so that gives us a community that we know, okay, they're at home too. I really want to celebrate Thanksgiving. Why don't we join together? So that's a nice.
So many of so many micro schools use similar kinds of procedures right now that, you know, I have got a couple clients who they're still meeting face to face, but the families have committed to one another to, this is our pod. We're only exposed to these people. And very much in the same way, these folks are choosing to go ahead and celebrate their holidays together. You know, they're not, the only exposure they're getting is to go out and pick up groceries, or, you know, to just swing by and pick them up. Other than that, they're together. It's very powerful because it's creating this new opportunity for community that in ways we've not had before. It sounds like you've found some of the silver linings to COVID.
It is I mean, I don't want to diminish or in any way make COVID less painful for the people who have had pain during this time. But from my perspective, it's such a great opportunity to change and fix the systems that were not working in the first place. A lot of us were running around really busy all the time. Oftentimes the teacher became the responsible for parenting a child rather than the academic end. And now I think it's just refocused and reshift us into community, to some self-care, some awareness of other people, awareness of our homes and our community. And I think that needed to happen. Unfortunately, there have been people who were lost in the shift, in the change of everything. Yeah,
I mean, COVID has created this awareness of all of the ways in which school wasn't working. So I think the first and foremost, the fact that so many people have relied on school as childcare. And that's where my heart just breaks, because I know so many families are struggling with having online learning and not having access to the technologies, the bandwidth, or even having the capacity to support the demands of online learning. So many families with, you know, multiple children who have to log on at different times and have all of these assignments they're being given that aren't all that easy to accomplish independently. I know
Mhm.
a lot of families are struggling with that. So are your students able to do all of this online learning with you on their own?
Yes. So my students are between the ages of the very youngest, 9 years old, and to 14. So they are quite autonomous. And that's why I really wanted to have live teachers available for them so that we can help and navigate their learning with them so that their parents could be free and know that they're putting their child's the education into the hands of us, but that they're also safe and that they're learning and that they're at a quality that they would want. So, we have the Zoom calls are back to back. They have a schedule. They clicked on their schedule and it pops up to the Zoom. The teachers are there. They're ready to assist them. And as they need, they do things together. So if they need to move to a second platform, the teacher's there to help them. For instance, like a National Geographic lesson, the teacher will project it, they will do it together, or they'll have a hands-on kit, so they're actually unboxing it and working together, or they're baking. So this is, I will tell you, I've been teaching that, I've been doing the life skills portion of it. And baking virtually has been a very interesting and exciting challenge. So that is, I would say, the only time we really need parents' intervention or guidance. Yesterday we carved pumpkins and made pumpkin pie from scratch. So then not having a knife and being in the kitchen. But if the circumstances were different where the parents couldn't be home for any reason, we wouldn't offer that class, right? It's like we spoke as a group and a community, would it be okay? It was unanimous that they would help with the knife skills in the kitchen during this time. But otherwise, we make it accessible to students if we're cooking.
Now, when the
That would be
pandemic
like the only.
dies down, Shireen, do you think you're going to go back to a face-to-face space with the students? Have any of them started to talk about that and their desires there? And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that if we do move into a space, I do want it to continue with the experiential learning, right? So that when we are together, that we're having an experience. So we're taking whatever we're learning and getting in the magic school bus and driving to go do it. So I would like to continue and do more of that if we do move into a physical space. If it does remain, as a micro school, things develop as they open up and develop. So if it seems that the key component appears to be more of a global aspect, so having kids in California and Minnesota and Florida and Egypt, if that continues and if that's the pulse of what needs to happen, then that's probably where we will stay, is online. But yeah, I mean, the future is, we're open to anything. Definitely looking at spaces right now.
Well, I will
That.
say to you, most of the people that I work with, they have a physical space, but an awful lot of them involve travel. Um, and having this stable ability to do online learning has given them all kind of options that many traditional schools don't have. Like, I have a client in Minnesota who, she had a family last year who was decided that they wanted to travel, but they continued to attend her micro school. They
Mhm.
had a space online where they could find materials and stuff, but they would call into the school on a regular basis in the mornings and participate remotely
Mhm.
with the kids who were gathered there. And now this year they're back in Minnesota and they're back into the school. To
Mhm.
have that ability as a family to say, school doesn't define when we can do the things we want to do is really powerful for families to be able to say, Shireen, we're going to take a vacation next week because there's this really good opportunity that we've had. Dad's traveling and we're all going to go with him, or for the next month or whatever. And we can either just put our learning on hold for a while, or we can call in and we can still learn remotely. It's like, again, it puts the child back at the center of their learning, and the learning is whatever they're up to, wherever they are, in a time that works and fits for them. I bet your students are happy. That's the thing I'm hearing about micro schools. Kids are happier.
That's been the response. I've had three parents that said, my child has never wanted to go to school. They've never wanted to go to school, and I have not seen them like this since they were 5. I have not seen who they authentically were since before we put them into school. And that response to me has been overwhelming, because that's the goal, right? That I'm a lifelong learner, you're a lifelong learner, that together, like, I'm learning, the students teach me something every day, and that relationship's really beautiful. And also, when my students want to travel, I have families that have the opportunity to travel. So when that happens, there's 2 options I usually give families. I can create a curriculum. You can take a binder with you if you want to have that on the road, you can take it, or we can design a project around where you're going. And so then when you come back, if you want to sign in and log in, it's the flexibility to do whatever you need to do or what you want to do, that we can touch base and see where you're at, like show us where you're at, and then make the actual learning be their location, right? Like that world school approach to education, that when they're there, that's what they're learning.
Yeah. I remember when I first started teaching, when kids would go away, one of the things we would ask them to do is to keep a journal and then come back and share it. And then that kind of went away. And we got into this mindset of families couldn't have their kids out of school because they would fall behind and they wouldn't be ready for testing. And so many families started to give up that prerogative that they have to know what's best for their family and to make choices for their family. I know I have in my own family, my nephews, my father would spend the winter in South Carolina. And when my nephews were younger, they would go for a week and miss school. And then there came this point where, like, my sister said, they can't miss school. I'm like, okay, I'm an educator. Yes, they can.
Right.
There's nothing that they're going to be learning in school that trumps having an opportunity to authentically be present with their grandfather. Like, that's a rare thing. So I totally get what you're talking about. It's amazing. And I'll really look forward to seeing what your school becomes, what Colossal becomes post-pandemic. Because so I'm curious, who has decided to come to Colossal? Who are your parents? Like, how have they wrapped their head around taking their kid out of this traditional system that they've been through? And then I have a related question is, like, what do your girls think?
My own children? Is that what you mean? Okay, so parents, I found that they are entrepreneurs in some way, right? So they have an entrepreneur spirit, and they understand that the quality of experiences and the learning and entrepreneur skills and 21st century skills of collaboration is actually what has proven to provide for their family. And so taking risks is definitely something that an entrepreneur is ready and willing to do with an optimistic mind, right? And I find that the children themselves are also very similar to that, right? So they have this, like, I'm gonna try this. Let's see what happens. And also, I think, why not? They knew it wasn't working last year in March when they had 75 calls and at different times that they need to be online with different people, and then trying to navigate their own work schedule. So as a mom, that informed how I designed Colossal Academy. I knew that it is not practical. It's not practical to have 3 different kids on 3 different Zooms at many different times, and that I needed to have something that was flexible and adjusted to my lifestyle. So actually, two of my children are at a micro school in Fort Lauderdale, because that's not my expertise. And I know that 5 and 7-year-olds are not who I work with. I know I'm the middle school years, 10 to 14, but there's an excellent micro school in Fort Lauderdale that provide the curriculum and allow me to be flexible.
Give a shout out to who that is, because that's actually one of my questions.
Compass Outreach. They're an amazing school in Fort Lauderdale, one-room school. They have many different fractions. So you can be online, you could be hybrid, you can be in person, but the amount of people in person right now is closed. I should tell you that. So once you're locked in, you're kind of locked in. But I can have a flexible, I can do flex. And that was really important for me as a working mom to have a flexible, okay, on the weekends, at 7 o'clock, after dinner, right before bed, like when I could get an education is when I am able to do it. And prior to that, having to be a teacher and to have them on a call at the same time and support their learning just didn't work. So I know that I needed a micro school, but that I also needed to be a micro school, right? For the age group that I work in. It's a
Well, I love that. I have a good
community.
sense. And it's funny because I'm hearing this over and over again, that the entrepreneurial parent, it's not that it's not an exclusive thing, but it tends to be the person who can wrap their head around why you would want something different and what the benefit to that something different is.
And I will also just really quickly say that the other really important factor for them is the education. That's, I felt, rather than like the quality and depth of education and the project base, they wanted that specific thing rather than a place for childcare. So that's what's worked out really well in my case, right, with that age group too.
Yeah, I totally get that too, because I'm also hearing that it's the person who has probably thought through homeschooling their child and realizes that that would be the better thing, that it would suit their child better. But maybe because they're an entrepreneur, they're not sure that they can make that go, in addition to all of the things that they're doing with their own business. And they're willing to spend the money to pay for somebody to give their child that amazing homeschool-like experience. And so that's one of the hallmarks of our micro schools. Well, fantastic. So you gave a plug out to Compass, which, you know, I knew about them, and I'm guessing your girls maybe work with Miss Iman.
So a little bit. So Miss Iman, Kind Academy has definitely been a reflection of what I do at a later age, right? So Iman can work with anybody at Kind Academy. They have like a larger age group, but I do feel that Kind Academy is super, yeah, she's just super. She's the one that gave me the idea that, oh, they need to be touching and feeling things. Like they need that sensory play. While they're in this dimension, they still need to be touching things. So that was I really appreciated her holding ground and steadfast in her, they need to touch and feel, and we can still be virtual, but they still need to be interacting with physical materials.
Well,
and
awesome.
They're in Fort Lauderdale too.
Yeah.
I have a great group of people.
I think Kind is connected with Compass. I knew about both of them. They're both part of our Facebook group. Is there anything else you want to share with us before we wrap up today?
I just want everyone to feel hopeful for education. I think this is a great opportunity for us to shift. The future is bright. It really is. I'm connected, and you are as well, to young people and the way that they think and where they're going and how optimistic and hopeful and inventive the future is going to be is so exciting. So I just want us to all be hopeful and excited for what's coming. And these youth are movers and shakers. So I'm just so honored to be a part of this.
Awesome. Well, listen, to our listeners, if you would like to get in touch with Shiren, please visit her website, which is www.colossal-academy.com. Thank you for listening to today's show. If you'd like to be a guest on the show to talk about your micro school or to share the work that you're doing in the micro schools movement, please reach out to me at mara@microschoolbuilders.com to set up your interview. And until next time, be well.